Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Yellowjackets Season 2, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with the past stuff. Specifically, Misty and her bestie, Crystal, or as we find out, Kristen, which I feel so bad because I couldn't remember that character's name. I was just referring to her as like Misty's new bestie, but it's because like her character's name was only said once or twice. But the moment I was like, because I started thinking to myself, even before we got a good chunk of the way in the episode, I was like, her friend can't be alive. Her friend must have died at some point in time because Misty severely latched onto the Yellowjackets, specifically Thaisa, Shauna, but more than anyone else, Natalie. She even says it later on. Present day referring to Natalie as her best friend. So, but if Crystal or Kristen was still around, why would you be latched onto her? Especially because she's like the only person there in the wilderness that likes you. So I figured something had to happen to her. Wasn't expecting it to be this episode, but once again, I learned your name, and just when I learned your name is when you die. The moment they were like, they're hitting it off, and it's like, once again, that's the only person Misty has constantly been interacting with since they hit it off. And I think it was even Mario like, yo, what are you dorks over here dorking about? And they're like, oh, this and that. And I didn't know, was that a system from last season? The whole like, oh, pick a card, whatever card you end up picking at random ends up being your duty. So like they ended up having, well, duty, and they had to get rid of like empty the pail or whatever. So the moment they're off, they're like, oh, and the moment they start telling secrets, I was like, Misty, don't do it. Misty, please don't do it. I was like, the moment it kept going on, I got a secret that you got a pinky swear you won't tell. I was like, and the moment Kristen said something, I was like, I knew it. But then I was like, oh, Misty, don't. Misty, don't. I was like, you got too comfortable, Misty. That's a secret you take to your grave. You could never let anyone know, because no matter what happened, everything is literally Misty's fault. 90% of what they went through is Misty's fault. At the very least, if she had destroyed like the black box or like transponder or whatever, they would have been able to at least be found maybe before people started dying. Maybe Laura Lee wouldn't be dead. Maybe Jackie wouldn't be dead. None of you would be cannibals. There's a lot that could have been prevented if it wasn't for you. So yeah, like we can all, I let it slip my mind sometimes being like, oh yeah, it's been Misty's fault since like episode 2. I kind of let that slip my mind from time to time, but this was a big reminder of like, never forget it was all Misty's fault. But yeah, because Kristen had opened up saying like, oh yeah, my name's actually Kristen, but my real name's Crystal, but no one corrected me. I mean, I never corrected anyone when they start calling me Crystal, especially because they call me Crystal the Pistol. No one had given me a nickname before. So she kind of felt part of the squad, and even, Missy opened up being like, yeah, like they didn't really like me until this wilderness situation happened. But she tried to play it off, being like, I'm just kidding, I'm just joking, like, oh, I almost made you believe me. And Crystal was like, yeah, but you're not that good of an actress. I was like, oh, I had to replay that because I love that line and that look on her face. Like, it's like, because it's like, how did you think that was going to go, Misty? Oh, we became besties so soon after this. I mean, we clicked so much. We vibe and stuff. You're totally going to be okay with the fact is that I stranded every single one of us here, and everything that we went through was entirely my fault because we could have gotten rescued potentially sooner, but I was selfish and loved everyone loving me, and all that was kind of a moot point considering everyone hated you after the mushroom incident, so... I mean, they were already kind of starting to turn on her regardless, but the mushroom incident really kicked it off where it's like, yo, people don't like you, so, oh, God. And it's like, yeah, even her calling Misty a psycho, I was like, okay, Misty, what are you going to do? You're either going to kill her or you're going to accidentally kill her. I figured, like, either you lose your cool, you accidentally, I'm like, you're too close to a cliff. I was like, this is too much prime real estate and circumstances for her not to end up dead. So I was like, either you're going to accidentally push her in a fit of rage or what. But I mean, Misty made it clear. He's like, you can't tell anyone. It's like, oh, what are you going to do? Poison me? It's like, no, I will effing kill you. And you kind of did because you backed her into the corner. She fell and she died. Now, I thought Misty was going to speak like, to me, the easiest way around this was like, oh my gosh, she got too close to the edge and she fell and died. But Misty's just kind of like, no, her cover up to that. And it's so heartbreaking because she tried to give Crystal give her CPR, but you could tell because you can kind of hear her ribs cracking. I mean, I think even naturally CPR can crack your ribs. That's why you have to be careful about it. But yeah, especially when someone's dead, like you could easily end up breaking someone's rib cage if you go too hard. But it's like, Yeah, she was already gone. Like, at that point, you were just like pushing up the blood. You see it come out of her mouth like more and more. And it's like, so how is she going to handle this? She went back and was like, oh my God, she got lost. I mean, I guess if you tell like, hey, she fell, at the very least, people might be like, did you have something to do with it? Especially because no one is Team Misty. So everyone would be like, maybe she killed her, you know? But at the very least, you're like, oh my God, we lost each other. It's a storm. It's snowy outside. Oh my God, she must have not been able to see the cliff and fell and died. So Misty's covered in that department. So not only does Misty's secret get to die with her on two folds. One fold being, well, I kind of stranded us all here. At least I made it so we didn't get rescued as soon as we did. Two, I kind of accidentally murdered my best friend at the time. So that's so fascinating. I was like, wow, oh God, I was like, once again, I just, the thought, I didn't really think about it before this episode, but the episode I started thinking like, Crystal must end up dead. Lo and behold, ends up being the episode she dies. Jeez, that's actually sucky, because once again, now Misty has no one in her corner, and she's also got that guilt, but we can see like Misty is really good at compartmentalizing. I mean, it definitely doesn't seem like it's weighing on her as much present day. I mean, at least Sean is still being haunted by Jackie's ghost, so it's not like, I mean, that's all probably like, they were all able to bury stuff to some extent, but after all this, like all the Yellowjacket stuff, like coming back, you know, with them being blackmailed and everything by, I completely forgot that Randy was a part of that. I remember Jeff was a part of it. I completely forgot Randy was a part of the blackmail as well. Either way, my point is like, this all ended up resurfacing a lot of that, so that's probably why Shauna started seeing Jackie again. I mean, that guilt was always there, but she was able to probably bury it deep enough, but all this kind of made that start resurfacing again. Either way, the other elements to the past is everyone is Team Lottie. The only people who aren't, Akila isn't really Team Lottie, but she's like, right, everyone else is doing it, I'm bored, so I'll join in. Thaisa's only doing it for Van's sake, because ever since she started joining like the morning ritual stuff, her sleepwalking has stopped. So it's like, hey, like, you know, at least for Van's sake, which I even love Akila's joking with her later on. It's like, oh, of course you're going to keep going because you're whipped, you know? So there's that. But the only people who definitely don't join in is Nat doesn't believe in all this. Shauna doesn't believe in all it. Plus she also has this weird vibe because like this little cult is like super into her baby and stuff, and like, oh, we can't wait for him to come and stuff like that. And you're just like, oh, that's weird. Like, she was starting to feel uneasy. So we don't know if all the girls are in. It seems like it's everyone except like, I mean, it doesn't seem like Ben joins in. So, but Ben's kind of going through his own journey right now with all that stuff of him, like, you know, looking back and like rewriting history between him and Paul. But yeah, it seemed like at least those are the three main ones. Maybe some of the other background like extras don't, like characters that we don't really know that well but pop up here and there. Maybe they, because it feels demeaning just to call them extras, because I don't even think they're extras. Like, I mean, some of them might be extras with lines or whatever, but I feel like they probably do have like character names and stuff like that. But some of the characters we don't really know that well have probably like, maybe they're a part of it too. We don't know. We don't know if those three are the only ones who don't mess with that. But yeah, later on, Shauna woke up to Lottie whispering to her baby and is like, yo, what the hell are you doing? And even Thaisa knew it was wild to do that, but it's like, it's fine. She's you know, it's not, she wasn't doing anything to hurt the baby. But that's because Thaisa is slightly Team Lottie, once again, for Van's sake, but also because it's like, because her and Akila had that conversation about, you know, the placebo effect of like, yeah, like her and Rachel was like, yeah, we had this like pre-game thing that we do, and maybe it you know, that it'd make us win more. And it's like, well, no, you guys still lost a lot. It's like, yeah, but still. It's a situation of maybe it was just all in her head. Maybe it just made us feel better. So Tice is kind of in the same boat. She doesn't know if the Lottie thing's helping, and maybe on some psychological level, on a placebo effect level, it is working, and it's making Van happy. So right, I'll you know, it's a win-win-win all across the board. So she's down for it. But because Shauna felt like, right, the last person she had on her side, like, because Thais has been by her side since she found out about her pregnancy, and now it's like, oh, cool, so now you're Team Lottie too. You're part of the crazy pack. So it's like, I don't like her whispering to my baby. It's like, the fact is, her and her little cult are kind of almost worshiping my baby like it's some, like, you know, that will make you uneasy. With everything that's going on, now I've got this added thing. There's also the Akila thing, too, about the whole rat thing. I'm wondering what that's going to turn into. That's going to have to sadly turn into like a her like rat gets eaten thing. It has to be, like, considering, because she's also like trying to like secretly feed it, because she, like, I think Mari walked in on her, and it's like, because she was like, oh, that's all I can give you right now, nugget. And Mari's like, what? She's like, no, I'm sorry, I just I'm talking to myself. So, but Shauna and Taissa kind of got lost in the wilderness, and it's that, oh, breathe in, like, what do you hear? The wind. And ultimately, Taissa and Shauna found their way back, because it was almost like oh yeah, like we're connecting, and we're hearing, we're in tune with the woods and the trees, and they were able to find us when we were able to put our voices out there, you know, like in a metaphorical but maybe spiritual sense, so they could find their way to us. So that's definitely interesting. Since we're also stuck in, with the past stuff too, well, Shauna's about to give birth, so we're about to find out sooner or later. I mean, we still got probably plenty enough time for something to go wrong with the baby situation, because we don't know. We don't know if it's a thing of, once again, the baby was okay, and the moment Shauna came back, she gave the baby up for adoption, or the baby died out there. Like, we still don't know which way that rolls. A theory I had early on about the baby situation, turns out I'm not the only one. Like, it seems like a lot of people had that same theory about, you know, Lisa being Shauna and Jeff's firstborn. But because I actually came across it, because apparently Nicole Maines, the actress who plays Lisa, commented on that. And so I actually didn't see her response. I saw something, I think an article, whatever, referencing, because you know, I don't know why I'd be thinking I'm hot shit or something with my theory. It's like, no, like, other people had that same theory. It wasn't anything special. And once again, I don't know if other people came up with that theory because of the same reason I did, because Nicole Maines is about that same age in real life. So it's like, maybe, you know, so her character's probably about her own real age of 25, because she's like 25, 26. So that's what was that was my reasoning for thinking she might be playing their child. So, and yes, like, there's a whole thing about like, oh, well, she's having a boy. It's like, well, you know, obviously Nicole Maines, you know, transitioned in real life, so like the character could be in the same boat where it's like, oh, the character was born a boy but transitioned and eventually became Lisa, you know. So who knows? I mean, like I said, Nicole Maines has responded, but I kind of didn't want to know. I'll look it up after the fact, you know, whether she shoots down people's theories, and, you know, if that ends up being a thing of, oh, she shot it down, but that's because it was too close to the truth, or she was just kind of having fun with it too, being like, oh yeah, there's all these wild theories about who my character actually is and stuff like that. So, I don't know, like I said, just for my own posterity and trying to avoid anything, I was just like, no, I'll keep guessing in my head. I don't want her to kind of immediately shoot down a theory, because even if someone shoots down a theory, doesn't mean that's not the case. It could just be her playing into it like, oh, I don't want to ruin the fun by telling you you're exactly right or whatever, you know. So, you know, I'll probably look into it a little bit more to see specifically what she said, but I remember came across something saying that she commented on that theory, that pretty big theory. But either way, so like I said, the baby's on the way. We'll ultimately find out the baby's future coming soon, but even then it's like, well, we don't know if it's going to be an immediate thing, or if it's going to be sometime even later, a little before they get found, what happened to the baby, that something might have happened to the baby. We also don't know how Lottie and the rest of that cult's going to be around the baby too, so that's going to be a big thing. So, but another angle to this is Javi. Javi has not talked since she was found. Obviously, it's led to like Travis and Natalie having some beef, because it's like, right, because he blames it all on Natalie, being like, if you hadn't done that, maybe I could have found my brother before he was jacked up. Because even Natalie's like, I didn't think he survived. Like, there's no way he should have survived. And for one, it's not like she was the only one. Even Ben was thinking that too, but she's not in a position right now trying to throw anyone else under the bus, because regardless of it all, she's the one that made that decision on you know, on Travis's behalf. Like, I mean, without, you know, but like, she thought she was like helping him move on by doing that. But yeah, it kind of ruined things between her and him. But yeah, Javi won't tell them what he did, like, because the others are like, well, obviously he had to have like come across something to be able to survive this entire time. Like, even from the little bit of food he was stealing from us, he's still been gone long enough that he shouldn't have made it on his own. So maybe he found someone else. But they were like, yeah, but if he found someone else, we would know about it, because they would have taken care of him, and obviously he wasn't like well taken care of in that regard. Until later on, Ben finds this drawing, and I guess it's Javi's, and Javi's was like, she told me not to tell anybody. What was it? Did she tell him not to come back or not to tell anybody? It was something like that. And Ben's like, who are you talking about? Which ties into some present day stuff we'll talk about soon enough. But speaking of present day, I love Misty and Walter spending some time together. Let's kind of pick up on that front. Doing the two truths and a lie situation of, hey, here's some lies about me, about Billy the goat having $175,000 worth of Taco Bell stock, even though he's never actually visited one and stuff like that. And it's like, which one's a lie? Turns out they're all true. And she's like, I don't think you understand the rules of your own game. He's like, yeah, the rules of the game are to win, and I won. So also you got to know more about me, so win, you know? And so she was about to do hers. For one, it's like, I hate monkeys. I think we're asking the wrong questions about, was it the moon landing? I think is what she was saying. So, but before we could continue to see what her third one's going to be, they came across the Lottie's group. So that was interesting. I mean, first and foremost, Natalie shooing her away. It is kind of jacked up because it's like, hey, I came to rescue you. Literally no one else knows because, I mean, you don't really have anyone else in your life except me, Shauna, and Thais. And even then, those relationships are threatening at best in some regards because we're all bound by the same trauma. But once again, Misty latches on to Natalie because it's like, oh, we're besties, so I'm here to help you. So, but Natalie's like, no, leave me alone, or you're going to mess up this thing I got going on here. And so Misty, being Misty, read that as, are you kidding me? Obviously, she's involved with a cult. Like, she would never, like, yeah, they make her say and cut ties with everyone that's important to her in her life. Like, of course, like me, her best friend, I would know. You're like, gee. I mean, it's like killing your actual best friend back in the day. Like, I mean, once again, Misty latches on to people because many people don't like her. So she uses every opportunity she can to kind of latch on to people. I mean, because obviously Natalie was kind of using her last episode, leading into them being friends and stuff like that. That's where it's coming from as well. But also, Misty doesn't have many people in her life. She has a bird, and that's it. Which is sad, too, considering Walter really, really likes her. I even love that his theory is that she's actually the one that killed Adam. That she's like, the way you shot down my theory, because it's like, if you'd actually looked into it, you know that Adam's mom had already passed away. So I knew that was BS. And he's like, yeah, like, you are capable of murder. He's like, you're charming, you're smart, like, you have a lot of characteristics shared with, like, people who could be killers. But for him, it's like, the fact is, like, he references like, yeah, my grandma killed my grandfather Joe, and yeah, she went to jail for 30 years, but she never missed sending me like a birthday postcard or something like that because she was caring, just like you. So for Walter, it's like, whatever your extracurricular activities are, it doesn't matter. I like you. But for Misty, it's like well, you don't know me. You're making these assumptions about me. I'm sure it's tied to a lot of stuff, because let's not forget, I'm blanking on her name now. It was earlier in the season, might even been last episode. The lady that Taissa hired that Misty really got to know. Well, we know Misty killed her. She also killed her best friend. She has a tendency to kill people when those people kind of end up betraying what she gets. Because she was catching, like, you know, vibing with Home Chick as well. Because I think, because she's on her defensive, because it's like, yeah, the people around me tend to get close to me and end up betraying me or letting me down in some shape or form. I think I can really connect with someone, but the moment I'm really honestly me, it's never good enough for people. So there's a lot of self-esteem issues built into that. And so for her, it's like, right, I don't need anyone else. I just need Natalie. Natalie only tolerates you. Walter legitimately likes you for who you are and embraces you, warts and all, which is kind of sad. But for Misty, it's just like, I think it's also that thing of they're all self-destructive in their own way. So like, any good, they're going to try and tarnish it. I mean, Natalie admits to doing that as well. Like, she always wants to kind of ruin anything good, specifically because at the time her and Travis were last together. He was with someone and she wanted to, there's a part of her that thought like, oh, I kind of want to ruin this because I want to ruin any happiness he has, just so what we have is, you know, even more so. You know, they had that, their own self-destructive cycle. So, but either way, circling back, Misty pushed Walter away, and it's hard to say on that because, like I said, like we saw last episode, they are so similar the way they were preparing themselves in their like respective hotel rooms or whatever. And I don't know whether Misty was kind of regretting that because she's fighting so hard for something that isn't real versus something that could potentially be real, but we don't know where that could always go. I think it's just Misty doesn't want to be hurt because she's been hurt and betrayed by people she's considered so close. And for her, it's like, Natalie hasn't betrayed me, so that's why I'm very like ride or die for her. So, but kind of circling with the whole Lottie situation, Natalie wants to deep dive and find out what's really going on. She tried to like unearth all this stuff about Lottie. It's like, hey, she's got all this information about you. She's got your phones. It's all this and that. But the rest of everyone there knows. It's like, I mean, that's the part of a cult. It's like, the mentality is, oh, we already know all the shady stuff, but we bought into it because we believe in it, which I'm sure is going to sour any relationship Lisa and Natalie were kind of developing, because there's a little parallels between them. I think Lisa's picking up on it after their time together last episode. So I think for her, she's kind of like, oh, like, because she was also saying, like, right, who you were in the past shouldn't define you. You should know that more so than anybody. And I don't know whether that's indicative of Natalie, who tried to unalive herself at the end of season 1, if that's what she's referencing, or just everything they went through as Yellowjackets, because that's what Natalie's referencing when it's Lottie. Once again, it's like, you try to help people, you make things so much worse. So we don't have the full context of everything that went down, but that's also something I forgot to talk about. Misty didn't see the Lottie situation coming. She was actually blindsided, because she's like, right, she's like, every other Yellowjacket, she's tracked down and she knows what they're up to. She's kept tabs on everyone, but Lottie's the one that slipped through her fingertips. She knows that, like, Lottie went to, like, a mental facility in Sweden. I guess, because Lottie comes from a prominent family, doesn't she? So it makes sense that they would send her internationally, away from, like, any tabloids or anything that could spread rumors about the family. So I guess that's why. Or maybe just the best facility just happened to be in Sweden. I think it's probably more so, like, you could have found something more America-based, but you wanted her as far away as possible because she was too much of an issue. So, but yeah, that to know that even Misty, as quirky, as good as she is at, like, you know, this detective stuff, even Lottie kind of still blindsides her. Because I was so certain, like, because we saw that Misty was one of the first, like, to kind of, oh my God, Lottie, like, she's this and that. But I guess after everything, when you kind of snap back to reality, it's kind of like, yeah, Lottie was kind of off her rocker maybe by the end of, like, them being lost. And now that we're back in society, she still ended up being that same way. So I felt, because the way season 1 ended, at least in the past, it almost made you feel like, oh, maybe Misty was still all about that present day. Not unless she's putting up a front, but why would she need to put one up in front of Walter? So it feels like she probably has not been in touch with Lottie in a very, very long time either. So interesting developments on that front. But Lottie and Natalie had this back and forth where it's like, right, even Lottie wants to understand just as much as Natalie. She needs to understand, what did Travis's words mean? What did he mean when he said you were right? The fact of right about what? What was it that he was trying to find when he, you know, put himself so close to death and ultimately ended up, you know, accidentally unaliving himself and not being able to come back? Well, Lottie kind of puts Natalie in a trance so she remembers the last time they were together. And it was a good time, but it led to, you know, them falling into bad habits. They ended up getting high, and Natalie ended up ODing. And then she woke up, she was back on the plane, and she saw that none of them made it. And even Lottie specifically said, wait, none of us made it? So I'm like, whoa, are we borderlining some, like, manifest stuff here, where it's kind of like they didn't make it, but some greater power might have resurrected them? So now, because now we also know, like, this all ties into Javi's thing of, like, oh, the woman he met, that friend he met, there was something out there in the woods, and maybe that also plays into why they kind of went cannibalistic like they did. I mean, obviously, they're like, you take something like, this is spoilers, but I'm going to have to deep dive into it just for the sake of, these are going to include Until Dawn spoilers, so if you care, I don't know how to jump around this for you, but the thing tied to Until Dawn is related to some evil spirit, some darkness, and that darkness is also tied into some cannibalistic stuff. So I'm wondering if there's some parallel here, especially because a lot of the stuff that Lottie was pulling from, even like last season, had like Native American roots, and so the stuff in Until Dawn, without really going into it, had, like, you know, its ties to Native American, indigenous people, I guess spiritual and folklore stuff. So I can't help but draw a parallel. I don't think it's going to be what it was in Until Dawn, but you can't help but make parallels if you know what the story is of Until Dawn. So I'm curious if that's what that's going to be. But, like, it might be indicative of a lot of, like, some of the stuff that they've been mixed up in, like maybe even the cannibalism might be tied to this evil or whatever. But is it makes you go like, whoa. Because I wasn't sure if this show was going to have like a supernatural side to it. And Lottie's stuff, it's also like, well, there's some truth to it, but also you're like, is it just Lottie just being very perceptive and there is a rational explanation for it? Or, nah, we're implying like there was some evil in that woods. And are we talking about like some like something dark was there? It's like it was there and it's in us. And Natalie's like, it followed us home, because that's what she was telling Travis, and that's what Travis meant, because I guess for him, he needed to get close to death to really find an answer, and he got close to death, and I guess like that's why he was freaking out when the last time he was talking to Lottie before the whole trying to hang himself situation, right? So he must have like gotten so close to death and saw it, and he was trying to see it again to find validity, because it might be something he learned about from Javi all those years ago, but he never said anything. Once again, we still don't know. Javi's still alive now. I mean, it passed, but we don't know about present day, like whether he ended up unaliving himself later on down the road, and maybe for Travis, it was his way to try and understand why his brother did it. Like, it seems like, whereas you kind of feel like, Lottie's leading her own cult, and some early on followers like Misty or whatever, but we see Misty kind of fell away from that, probably like after they were saved and everything. But Lottie's been feeling something, and especially like when that was all said and done, hearing about the darkness, she turned and looked and saw like some a shadow with kind of like the antlers and stuff. So the question then becomes like, is it in all of them when it came back, or did it latch onto Lottie specifically? Well, we know Taissa has a connection to all of this because she found all those tree marks all those years ago, that symbol. And now what's happening to her is happening now. Once again, you assume like it might be kind of like Shauna seeing Jackie, just like it's staring, like something steering now after all these years, because a lot of that Yellowjacket stuff was being brought to the surface by someone deep diving into it, and obviously them eventually getting blackmailed about it. Now, part of me now wonders, the whole her seeing Jackie thing, could that have been something trying to draw Shauna in, but she kind of pushed it away, and maybe Taissa and Lottie are kind of losing their respective battles because of this? If we're really going full supernatural with this, I have no idea if that's what this is really going to be, or whether it legitimately is just Lottie losing her mind, and them all losing their mind because they're dealing with like some deep-seated trauma. But what's the perfect scenario for a horror situation? Oh, all of this is in your head because it's trauma, and all this supernatural stuff isn't real, when in actuality it is. But then you kind of have that back and forth of, but is it real, or is it all in your mind? We'll also have to wait to see where all of that ends up taking us. Some other developments we got was the Van and Taissa thing. Now, my biggest question was wondering, what was the last time Van and Taissa saw each other? I mean, we don't know. Well, I was about to say, like, because we know they went to Jeff and Shauna's wedding, but, like, from the photos we saw, Jeff and Shauna were still fairly young when they got married. They were probably in their early 20s, so it's like, it's definitely been probably, like, most of that 25-year period. It's been the last, but even then, we don't know, like, if Shauna's wedding was the last time they were around each other. But yeah, Taissa opened up to Van, because I brought it up previously. Like, Van's the only one that could ever fully understand, because Van knew what she was going through and embraced her, where Simone pushed her away. And it's like, even Van's like, yo, that's some wild shit. Like, sacrificing the dog at the altar and stuff like that. Did Sammy see it? It's like, no, luckily he didn't. But for her, she's scared, She also started paying, like, I guess she started worrying that maybe Van might be going off the edge, because she started seeing, like, there's some, like, heavy dude, I think, oxy that Van has. But Van's like, oh, yeah, it was for my mom. She had cancer. And it's like, yeah, the cancer scared the bitch out of her, because it seemed like they had a complicated relationship. And what capacity? I don't think they really covered that much in season 1, when we were kind of seeing everyone in their home situations before. I mean, even then, we didn't really get much. We only got a little bit of everyone's home situations in the pilot. And obviously, we dived a little deeper into Natalie's home situation. I think she's the only one whose home situation we kind of dived into more post the pilot, So, I don't know. Was it a pilot, or was it just a first episode? I think the first episode of the show was a pilot. Either way, obviously, like, that does matter, because just like how pilots are filmed and versus like how, like, when something goes to series and stuff like that, like, a lot can end up changing. Either way, tangents and all that aside, that was just interesting that, like, now some of Van's family stuff came. Like I said, maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. Maybe it did come up, but I think it is a little suspicious the fact that she kept. I mean, we don't know how long ago it's been that her mom passed away, but it's also a thing of like the fact that she kept them. I think that was kind of I felt like that was kind of something to be kind of suspicious about. But I even love that it's like for Van, it's like you can't just come here and kind of like get swept up in what we were before and like, oh, why we didn't work out and stuff like that. She's like, oh, we can't go like full high fidelity and, you know, say, hey, what's the deal with what happened to us? And she's like, is that Seinfeld? She's like, yes, I'm mixing up my pop cultural references because I'm fucking upset. I love that. But it's like, yeah, ask me for help. And she's like, dude, I've been through all of this. I'm losing my mind and I'm scared. So Van, obviously, it's like, because Van was like, obviously, I'm not going to just let you go and deal with this on your own. I didn't let that happen all those years ago. I'm not going to let it happen now because I care about you. But for Taissa, it's like, I did what I did to Sammy's dog. I'm scared what I might do to my son. I mean, even to the point that he's scared of this other me, even though he recognizes it's not me. Plus, like Simone, everything's kind of screwed up on that part. I mean, not only where your relationship is, I mean, the other you kind of led to a situation that she's kind of hooked up to a ventilator and potentially in a coma. Like, you know, so there's that. So Thais is spiraling a little bit. And when Van ended up waking up later on, she pops a pill, but then lo and behold, the other Taissa pops up, and it's like, this isn't where we belong. So where she plans on taking Van after that, where they're going to go. I mean, because Van was always one to also, like, let Taissa embrace that side of things, like, follow where it's going, because she realizes, like, there's a deeper thing going on here than any of us realize. So we'll have to wait to see where things kind of go on that front. And then finally, we have the Shauna family situation, where Callie was hanging out with the cop dude who I finally recognized where I recognize him from. I kept being like, why does that? I didn't realize it until the recap of like his previous introduction to it's Matt, but his fake name's Jay. I was like, why do you seem so familiar? Because I know him from like, I think there's other things I've seen him in, but the thing I was thinking of, I was like, oh yeah, there's that reboot of like on Hulu. I think it was Mindy Kaling specifically was behind it. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. I still never saw all of that. I only saw some of it. I never saw, I think it was like 10 episodes. I saw like maybe 5 or 6 maybe. Either way, I knew him from that because he's one of the core characters in that. But then it finally clicked in my head where else I recognize him from. He's one of the deputies from Stranger Things. I was like, I felt so stupid because I knew I was like, there's something more recent. I feel because that was from like a couple years ago. I was like, there had to be something more recent. It's like, yeah, Stranger Things because he was even in the most recent season. So I was like, right, you're one of the deputies because he also wears glasses in both situations. So like that's why I almost didn't recognize him. For one, his hair styled a little bit differently and no glasses. So that kind of like threw me for a loop. But I love that Callie found out about Jay not being who she thought he was. She saw the name and it's like, why are you using a fake name? Who are you really? Googled his name and his name came up with like some charity thing with the police. So it's like, yeah, you know he's a cop. So it's like, Mom, I got to tell you something. Just don't be mad. And it's like, and Jeff's like, okay. And Shauna's like, no. Tell us what it is first. And it's like, all right, so you were wondering if I told anyone about anything about your affair. It's like, yeah, I told someone, and it turns out he's kind of a cop. It's like, wait, what? And I love Jeff because it was like, oh, this person I'm hanging out with. It's like, wait, who? And it's like, how old is he? And even Shauna being like, does he know that you're in high school? She's like, I told you not to freak out about it. Even I'm a little like, does he actually know how old you are? I mean, you're like 18. Doesn't make it any better. It still makes it, I mean, who knows how old he is? I mean, even if he's like, oh, I'm 25. I'm like, I don't know, bro. But that's also kind of because I'm me. I've always had my 3-year rule. I mean, there's never really been an older rule. There's always been the lowest I'll go is like 3 years. That's always been kind of my standard when it comes to like dating anyone younger than me. But like 3 years is kind of like as low as I'll typically go. I've had that stance for like years and it's always just kind of been my rule. Never like a issue, like I don't have an age thing for like older because I do have a thing for older women too, so you know, kind of learned that about myself. So I haven't really like capped off on what is kind of my cutoff limit for older. Either way, tensions and all that aside, it's not about me, but it's just the parallel of like, even if he's like 25, that's still kind of like weird to me because it's a 7-year difference, but she's 18, but I don't know, man. It's weird. It gets in that weird territory. So that's why I'm like, I don't know how to feel about that. But yeah, it's like, yeah, he's kind of a cop, and I kind of told him about the affair. It's like, what? Because I skipped over the important part because she knew he was fishing for information. He's like, you can tell me about whatever it is, and that solidified it for her. Like, okay, so you really are only after info about my mom. It's like, yeah, I found out about who the person she's fucking. It's my dad's best friend, Randy. And she's like, yeah, how fucked up is that? He's like, yeah, because he was almost kind of like, oh, he was hoping he had like Shauna dead to rights. But now it's like, I love that it's like, even Jeff is like, wait, you told him my wife is sleeping with my best friend? And he's like, it's better than the alternative where I tell him mom was sleeping with the guy that she ended up killing. But Shauna's like, honestly, this could work to our favors. And he's like, really? It's like, come on, you know? I mean, it gives us something valid. Like, hey, most likely they're following Callie, but most likely if we set up a thing where I'm going to meet up with Randy, they'll follow me, believe the whole story about me and Randy having an affair, and then bounce, you know? And then I love Callie being like, I see, so I did fix it. Yeah, and Shauna's like, you did great, honey. It's like, you know, it's like you don't know what you're doing. You're kind of amateur at this. But you know, it's like, don't worry. I'll give you passing grade for now. So obviously it's like he already had to deal with the Adam thing. Now he has to deal with like you pretending to have an affair with his best friend. So, I mean, I guess because she throws it in Randy's face, you can almost think of it as karma for you blackmailing them. But yeah, they set up the whole deal. Randy, I love like Randy was like, yeah, Jeff said no touching you. And she throws a condom. He's like, whoa. Me and my lady were working it out. She's like, no, we're not actually going to do it. You're going to go in there and you're going to splooge in it and throw it in the trash. And it's like, no questions asked. And she's also like, also, Randy, you better not be thinking about me. He's like, Scout's honor, I won't, you know? Also, Randy also spilled the beans about, some FBI agents. And Sean was like, what? About Natalie. It's like, about people in purple. She's like, huh. It's like, right, because her and Thaisa are often dealing with their own things. So the only one who's worried about Natalie is Misty. So that at least it's out there a little bit. But Shauna's got so much else she's dealing with, so she's probably not going to latch onto that. Maybe she will. We'll have to wait to see how that turns out, because the others are, I feel like Thaisa and Van's situation will eventually lead them to Lottie, because whatever that thing is might not just be in all of them. Maybe it is, a fraction of it is, but maybe it's mainly in Lottie. Maybe that's why her circumstances are what they are, why she's been seeing what she's seeing, because it's always been in her since the beginning. Since like they got lost and stuff, that's why she's had the visions and stuff, because it's this thing latched on to her. And so maybe, once again, Thaisa's words of, this isn't where we're supposed to be, this isn't where we belong. So maybe, just maybe, they'll end up going to Lottie, and maybe Shauna will find out about it, and that'll eventually lead her to Walter, who will tell her about Misty, which will tell her about the whole Lottie situation. So, which Misty did make it, we saw at the end of the episode, she did make her way into the facility. So, we'll see how Natalie reacts to that, and how that whole situation plays out, especially when Lottie and Misty are reunited. That's going to be interesting, especially after their discovery this episode. But, yeah. Sadly, Randy couldn't go through with it because it was, like, too much pressure and stuff. And then he looks up and he sees a balsam lotion. I was like, don't do it, you idiot! I was like, what's going to happen is they're going to get the condom tested or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it's not going to be splooge, it's going to be lotion or whatever. So they went in there, like, Kevin was going to let it be, but it's like, nah, Matt's like, no, there's something here. So they end up finding a condom, but he smells it, and he's like, oh, it's strawberry. It's like, yeah, Shauna faked it. She's just trying to throw us off the trail, which then it's like, yeah, but you know what that means, Matt? That means your girl ended up feeding us false information, means she's onto you. And then Matt's like, well, yeah, she might be good, but I'm better. So he's going to keep up this front to try and pump her, probably lure her into a false sense of security so he can really get the upper hand on her. We'll see how that plays out. So that whole plan didn't go the way. They almost got away with it. If Randy had just been able to get it up and just, nut in the condom, they'd be fine. But the moment he looked at the lotion, I was like, you're about to screw this whole thing up, Randy. Maybe if he knew how dire it is, he would have been, it would have been even more pressure, and he probably wouldn't have been able to, complete him, reach completion into the condom. But still, there's just so much to keep in mind as we go forward into the next episode. I'm so fascinated to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.